Welcome to the Outer Darkness Happy Hour podcast. We're John and Ashley.
This is not your typical Exmo Nevermo podcast.
We're here to share our stories, but we want to hear yours.
So grab a drink, and pull up a chair, and let's talk about life in the outer darkness.
Hi, welcome to the Outer Darkness Happy Hour podcast. This is episode 3, North to Alaska, where we talk about my trip to Alaska from California and what brought me there and kind of all the fun, hilarious things that happened along the way.
Yeah, we thought this should be a good episode because when I tell people that my wife came from Alaska, they always stop and ask all these awesome questions. What was it like there? And did she see a lot of moose or bear? And there were so many stories behind Ashley's experiences in Alaska that we thought it'd be a good idea to come up with an episode because there's so many awesome stories that Ashley has that came from Alaska. So there's a lot there.
Yeah, kind of like his early mission stories and early life kind of made him who he is today. Alaska definitely helped make me who I am today. Lots of good, lots of fun. So here we go.
Do we want to give a shout out to our episode drink now? Or?
Oh, sure. I was going to mention it at the end, but yeah, this is an ode to Canada. It is their national cocktail called the Caesar. We call ours the Et Brute. Nice little play on that. The instructional video is linked at the bottom, and I also have some videos on TikTok and Instagram with quick instructions if you want to have it with us. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, here we go, huh?
All right, how'd you get to Alaska?
How'd I get to Alaska? Okay, well, how I got to Alaska started with me going to Texas. And the quick little story behind that, my brother joined the Army when he was 26 years old, and I was 16. And so he joined the military, he left for boot camp, he did a stint in Korea, and then he ended up being stationed in Killeen, Texas. And at that time, while he was there, he had his battle buddy. They had like their assigned people they went on exercises with out in the desert. And one of them ended up being who would become my future husband, my future first husband. So when I was 18, the summer after my first year of college, my brother said I should come visit him in Texas because he was there with my sister-in-law and they had 4 kids and I love my nephews, so I really wanted to go. And he was really good friends with my first husband, soon-to-be first husband. So I went there to visit and we obviously hit it off. I mean, I was 18 and he was 21 and, you know, our maturity levels aligned quite perfectly at that point, an 18 and 21-year-old. So, yeah, long story short, after a few months, I ended up...
The doctor said you guys were in love.
Yeah, the doctor said I was pregnant. I found out I was pregnant, and we did what you think you're supposed to do, right? So he proposes, I say yes, and, you know, for all intents and purposes and what you feel is love when you're really young, we were in love, so why not get married? And I've always been super adventurous and up to doing things that other people might think are scary or, you know, maybe not well thought out. And when he asked me if I wanted to move to Alaska with him, I was like, heck yes. I was like, let's go to Alaska. And so a month later, my brother is done with his service. He's done in the military, so he's driving back to California with his wife and 4 kids. My fiance at the time, he had 1 more month that he had to serve, and I couldn't live on base with him. We weren't married, and we weren't quite ready to, you know, just get married right away. My family outside of Texas hadn't even met him yet. So I drove back with my brother in the back of a van from Killeen, Texas, all the way to California. And I don't know how many of you have ever driven through Texas. It's the never-ending state. Like, it took 4 days to get out of there. Like, we started in Killeen, East Texas, and just headed west, and it was a long journey, especially in the back of a van when you're prone to car sickness and you're newly pregnant, and I had awful morning sickness, so it was fun. I sat between 2 one-year-old twin boys in the back seat of the van. It was great, but I got to those memories I got to have with my brother are awesome. So I get to California, and I break the news to my dad, who I love dearly.
Who's the real victim in all of this, by the way?
No,
I was going to mention
fine.
that.
He's fine. I've always been a daddy's girl, and it was hard for me to tell him. So, okay, first of all, I'm pregnant. Second, I'm engaged. And third, I'm moving to Alaska in a month. And I still remember he kind of just put his hand on his heart and leaned into his dresser, and he was just like, okay, and a credit to my dad being the amazing father he is. He got over all of his feelings about it really quick, and just, he took me to go get an ultrasound. He made sure we had food in the house that I could eat to keep me from throwing up all the time. He bought me the disgusting prenatal vitamins that I hated, and just kind of prepared, for me to leave. So fast forward a month later, and my fiance drives from Texas to California and meets my dad for the first time, meets my mom for the first time, sees my brother again, meets my oldest brother for the first time. And we're just talking about hopping in the truck, I'm packing my stuff, and driving to Alaska. And my dad pulled him aside and said, "You're not taking my daughter to Alaska unless you marry her." And so we found the sweetest little quickie wedding, a little different than a courthouse wedding. We went to a place called Chapel the Bells. If you're from California near Outwater, you know exactly where it's at. And we got married, and it was a nice little ceremony for what it was. But 2 days later, we were packed up. We had north to Alaska and just married, painted on the back of the camper of his Dodge Dakota pickup truck. And with reckless abandon, we took off and drove through Utah. So it was quite possible that John and I were in the same vicinity of each other for about 2 hours while we were in Salt Lake City. We had to stop at Walmart, we had to get gas, we had to get snacks. And then we drove to Montana.
Well, I stopped at that Walmart I think we figured out the same week you were driving through Utah. I stopped by that Walmart to buy the soundtrack to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, that's right, yeah. And guess what I picked up when I was in Walmart? I went over to the CD section because, a long drive, and I was so bored and stressed out. So I wanted some fun music, and I loved the movie. I'd watched it in Texas with my brother and sister-in-law and my fiance, so new husband, I guess, at that point. And so I ran right over. I saw the soundtrack, grabbed it, and I think we listened to that on repeat all the way to Montana. And we did mention that we weren't going to make this podcast a trauma dump or talk bad about anybody, so I'll be careful. But let's just say once my new father-in-law was in the truck, we didn't play that soundtrack anymore. Wasn't his thing. So it was the comforting sounds of awkward silence, pretty much from Montana to about halfway through Western Canada before we finally all started talking to each other and things got a little bit better.
You told me a good story, though, when you went through the Canadian border, though.
Oh, yeah, that's right. See, this stuff happened that's crazy. It's like 24 years ago. So it's a long time ago, and I forget some of it. But we pull up to the border patrol, and I'm not sure what it's like now. Like I said, it's been a long time. You didn't need passports back then. We just were there with our IDs and our smiles and our good intentions. And they stop us, and they see me. And at that point, as a freshly 19-year-old young woman, I still looked about 15 or 16 at that point. Didn't wear makeup. I had long, dark hair that I'd wear pulled back, in braids or ponytails and stuff. So they pull out my new husband and my new father-in-law, and they're questioning them, and one of the agents comes over and is questioning me and making sure that I'm okay and that I'm, I know what I'm doing and where I'm going, and asked me questions about where I grew up and did my family know what I was doing, and I had to show them my ID, and they really, really looked at it, and then they could see that I was, in fact, 19, and we had to show our marriage certificate. And it was the Canadian Border Patrol. They weren't rude, but for me it was scary. Like, they check your vehicle for guns because they don't allow guns to go through Canada. But right after we passed, like right after we got through, we're driving and we hit this road. And for a girl coming from California, I'm like, it's just the road. And it's a 2-lane road. And then it's just trees on both sides. So you can't see anything but the road and trees and these little headlights, you know. And this guy hops out across the road on all fours like a frog, looks at us, does the ribbit thing, and hops back. And I'm just sitting there in the middle of the seat. And the first honest to goodness thing that popped into my head was, oh my God, I want to go home. Like, I was so scared. It was just this huge, like, you hear about the wilderness, but again, I was a California girl. Even though I grew up in a, you know, kind of the Central Valley of California where it's more country, never experienced anything like that. So that's how the show kicked, or the show, that's how the shit show kicked off. And we ended up pulling like 20-hour days in the truck because my new husband and new father-in-law, they were just taking turns going back and forth. And again, remember, newly pregnant, I had to pee every 40 minutes, and I felt like I was going to throw up the whole time, but I wanted to be tough and show them I could hang, so I held it for a long time.
This is all the beginnings of like a Stephen King.
Yeah, it could have been. It could have been really bad. There was, I don't know if I've told you this story, but we were driving, and I can't remember if the name of the town was Dead Horse or White Horse, but it was in Canada. And we parked the truck and went into the market to get just stuff because we were camping along the way. I think we only stayed in 2 hotels. So that was another thing I got to like hit the ground running doing was camping and, you know, becoming really good at running out in the woods to use the restroom. We park, we go inside, we come out and our license plate's gone. Someone stole our license plate and we're like, oh my gosh, because we're in a foreign country. I mean, it's Canada, but it's still a foreign country. And all of a sudden we don't have a license plate on the vehicle. It only had the one. It didn't have a front license plate. So they took our back one and left us high and dry. So we're driving. We had no choice but to report it and then just go. We get to the next town, and I shit you not, there's a wall, a wooden, like planked wall filled with license plates from all over the United States and Canada. Like, this is a thing. People, they steal them and then they go. So, yeah, we did actually go and look and be like, yeah, well, they probably just hadn't gotten it there yet. And
you're looking for your license plate on the wall.
It's probably there now, I'm sure. This little license plate from Texas. But, yeah, that was fun. And driving through Canada, I mean, Canada is beautiful. What do I always tell you about Canada? Like, Alaska, Canada, when it's in a movie. Like, if you're watching a movie and it's in Alaska, it was definitely filmed in Canada. Because I'm like, wow, Canada's gorgeous. I can't wait to see Alaska. And then we pull in and we're kind of like on the coast. We get like near the coastal areas. The trees are real skinny and shrubby. And they'd had this thing called a beetle kill that killed like so many trees. So they had to burn them to get rid of it. And it was just Canada, to me, Canada was Alaska, is what it looked like in all the movies with these huge waterfalls and beautiful rock formations. And then boom, Alaska was totally different. Still beautiful, but not like, you know, Lifetime movie of the week, rom-com, beautiful for sure.
So if Canada did meth, it would be Alaska.
Yeah. Or if Canada just had a really hard day. So we won't give up on Alaska. Alaska is probably one of the most beautiful states in America. Now, when I first got there, you know, I hadn't been very many places. I grew up in California. I went to Texas, and don't get me started on that, on what I thought of Texas. But Alaska was definitely in my top, like, 2 most beautiful places I'd been and seen. And I'd been up the Northern California coast, Oregon, Washington. Alaska is really gorgeous, but it was fun, you know, first time coming to Utah and just seeing how big and beautiful the mountains were here. I love big mountains. And where I lived in Alaska, we were on the Kenai Peninsula. So really it was just trees. You know, when around your immediate surroundings that you could see were trees. And when you're driving to town, the highway goes along the inlet, and you could see across the inlet, and you could see volcanoes, like the mountains there, Mount Redoubt, I think. They're the ones you could see. So that was like as close as I got to every day viewing the mountains. I'm still in awe every day here when I drive and I get to see them.
So when you get there, you get to the house. Where did your in-laws live? Where did you live?
Well, we
What
lived
was that
with them.
setup
Well,
like?
no, we lived with them. So you're jumping forward about a year as far as when we were in the same area but in different houses. No, we lived with them, but I need to take a drink and then I'm going to tell you this fun story. I'm going to go ahead and embarrass myself a little bit. So again, remember, pregnant, newly pregnant, taking prenatals every day like clockwork because I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to stuff like that. I'm trying to protect this little baby growing inside of me. But it has a lot of iron, and women will know kind of where you get kind of constipated. So anyways, I'm driving. You were doing 20-hour days, right? Not a lot of bathroom breaks. And I'm like, my stomach hurts so bad. And my new father-in-law had the best of intentions, I'm sure. But he runs into a store called Safeway, and he runs in there and he grabs a 32-ounce bottle of prune juice, which I've never had in my life. He goes, here, drink this, and it'll help. You'll feel much better. And when he said drink this, I took it like drink this whole thing. I drank the whole thing, like the whole thing of prune juice. So by the time we get to the house, we're walking in, my stomach, I'm like, I felt like I was giving birth. My stomach hurt so bad. And I meet my new mother-in-law, and she has one of her best girlfriends is there because she wanted to introduce them to me as well. And I shook her hand, gave her a hug really quick, and I said, I really have to use the bathroom. And I spent the next hour and a half in there thinking I thought maybe my new little baby might not be in me anymore. That's how bad it was. It was so awful. So that's how I was introduced to my mother-in-law. I was having to frantically run to the bathroom. That was bad. But after that, can't really get too much more embarrassed than that.
Yeah.
So am I forgetting any details about
No, I just like the setup that you described, where you lived, where your
Oh,
in-laws
okay.
lived.
So
that
we
whole
can jump forward a little
compound
bit. Okay, so
is
initially,
really interesting.
when I was we were first married, we didn't have a house, and my new husband he'd been in the military for 3 years, so he didn't have a place. He went from high school living with his parents to joining the military and leaving. So we come back, and they have their little basement, or I guess it was kind of a bigger basement, but it's set up for us. There's a room, there's a bathroom, there's a rec room, and so we stayed with them for, gosh, we stayed with them for almost a year or a year and a half, because we didn't move out until my oldest was about 9 months old. We rented a house. Fast forward a year later, and our lease is up, and I am newly pregnant. This seems to be a theme, being newly pregnant with our second. And we decide we don't want to rent anymore. We weren't really super happy where we were, and we wanted to buy a house. At that same time, his parents decided they wanted to build a smaller place. And my father-in-law was pretty handy, good at construction and stuff, so they decided to sell us their house. So we buy their house, and then they build a house that is, yelling distance. They were close. We could see them.
Yeah.
And I didn't think like this at first. Again, I don't want to put a dark cloud over it, but later on, much later, especially after like a separation and divorce and stuff like that, I referred to our little compound. So it was our house where they worked. They had a small business they owned, and then they had their little house right behind the business, and it was a nice little triangle, and I called it the trifecta of misery. Is how I referred to it, because it was, living that close when everything is going great is awesome, but when things aren't going great, it was not fun being that close and constantly under supervision.
Yeah.
For sure.
So keeping with the outer darkness, heaven and hell theme, what happened when you went to church with your new husband and your in-laws, and you were pregnant when you met the pastor for the first time?
Oh, it wasn't when I met the pastor for the first time. You're thinking, I had to go to, I know what story you're talking about. I had to go to adult catechism, so I
That
wasn't.
just sounds
I,
so
wa-
painful.
I wasn't. I don't know if the Mormons have a version of that. You can maybe later tell, like, if there's a parallel to that, but they're Lutheran, right? So I marry into a Lutheran family, and you in the Lutheran church, you go through like a catechism, confirmation, and that happens for most kids when they're like 12. But because I just joined, I had not been baptized, and I obviously did not go through a catechism. I came from a very loosely Baptist family. So we start that, and we go together, and I don't remember why we went together. I don't remember why he was with me, except maybe it was something like a new married couple thing combined with my adult catechism classes I had to take. But we're sitting there and we're talking, and the pastor, who was very black and white, always kind. I mean, I got to know him for quite a few years after that, but very black and white in the way he viewed like scripture and stuff like that. And he looked right at me and my little 7 month, by the time I started going to catechism, I think I was 6 or 7 months pregnant, so I was showing.
Prego belly.
Yeah, it was little because first baby, but it was there. And he just looked right at me and he goes, well, it's obvious that you've sinned. And I'm like, what about this guy? Like, he was there, not just me. So those were the little windows I started getting into religion. Because again, I grew up with the idea of Christianity and just being a good person and, loving God and, heaven and hell, those ideas. But no one around me was really judgmental in a religious way. So I started getting these little hints of where my place was in the eyes of a religion. I'm damaged goods pretty much, but he's not, and I did something wrong, but he didn't, just because I wear it. And I remember as a kid, one of my favorite books in grade school that we read, I don't remember what year we read it, was The Scarlet Letter. And I kind of felt like my little baby bump was like my scarlet letter. Like everybody knew I did something wrong because they could look at me and see it. But, they don't look at the man involved any differently. So that was kind of weird for me. And like I said, I think I've mentioned before, we went to church every Sunday that we could, and I liked it for the social aspect. I mean, we lived rural. My only neighbors were my in-laws, and as great as they could be sometimes, they weren't always great. So I found, some friendships at the church that kind of kept me going. We did ladies' Bible study and things like that. But anyway, yeah, so my long adventure, 6-7 day trip, probably 7 day trip to Alaska led to a lot more, many more firsts. That first 2 years, just kind of treading in new waters for sure. I think I did okay though. I mean, I'm sure I have more stories. Maybe I'm forgetting if you have any.
So when did you start becoming a physical trainer?
Oh, that was later. So, I mean, I guess it wasn't that much later. Oh my gosh, I can't believe how long ago that was. My daughter was about 14 months old when I started doing personal training and fitness and nutrition classes at our local gym that I'd worked at off and on through my pregnancy with my son, with her older brother. So yeah, it was just a few years after moving to Alaska. I felt like I was there much longer, but when I look back, my daughter was only, she's 14 months old.
So you were a jogger, you ran a lot. You did a lot of races
yeah.
and so forth. So what was your theory on running? You had obviously a couple of dogs at the house. You lived in the middle of nowhere, but you were also a runner. Of course, being from Utah, I would assume there's bears and moose all over the place.
Yeah,
so when I asked you about that, what did you say? What your theory was on running?
Okay, so first of all, I've always been a runner or brisk walk. Activity was always important to me, even before I had kids. So I got a treadmill. My dad Thank you so much, Dad, if you're watching this. He got me my first treadmill complete with a warranty, which then got me 2 more treadmills because I murdered the first ones. Like if you make the repairs cost more than a new treadmill, you get a new treadmill. So that was great. I trained a lot on that, but I never ran faster than I did when I would run outside because I figured if I can get from point A to point B faster, I had less chance of like running into wild animals. And then when I started running more, I realized, okay, I wasn't really running into a ton of wild animals, but I did come into contact with a lot of weird men. I can't even tell you what they looked like exactly. They all kind of had the same, well, mentioned that we're wearing our flannels in honor of Alaska and Canada.
Episode.
Yeah, but a lot of them look the same, so you can't even really tell. I don't know how I would describe somebody to a cop if they're harassing me. He had flannel on, he had a beard, he drove an old beat up truck. Okay, that's like 95% of who lived in the area where I lived. So I started carrying a gun in a holster, and my husband was, they're all big on guns up there. Everybody has a gun. It's a concealed carry state. My father-in-law was
it's open carry, right?
Open carry. Yeah, but you can it's concealed carry. You don't have to have a permit. You can have a gun. Concealed carry means it can be hidden, but you don't need a permit.
Correct.
So it's just there. So open carry, you have to have it in view, but concealed carry you don't. So my father-in-law at the time, he was a gunsmith. Really used to, I think, teach people how to shoot. He was an instructor and very knowledgeable. So they made sure I was handy with the gun, and I got a nice little running side piece that I would keep on me. And I would take our dog Roxy, a sweet little boxer lab mix. She would go running with me or walking with me, whether I had the kids with me or not. And I'd have the gun too. I took her for the wild animals, and I took the gun for the locals. And that was not even something, I said that openly in front of my husband and my in-laws and everything, and that was not something they scoffed at. They know, because
right.
It's, people either go to Alaska because they have family there and they love it, or they go there because they're hiding from something. And there's a lot more people that go there because they're hiding from something than, have warm, fuzzy feelings. And you can get away with a lot up there because there is just a lot of places to hide a body in Alaska. But yeah, so that was my running theory and why I ran so fast, and also kind of why I kicked ass every time I'd run a 5K or a half marathon. I was fast. I just don't have that motivation now because nothing is chasing me or trying to kill me on a regular basis. But man, I could book it pretty good.
Well, when you first started visiting me from Alaska, staying at my townhouse, and you'd go running, I always warned you that you may get mauled by a Lhasa Apso on the trail.
By a shit too. Yeah. So I was free to run as much as I wanted without fear of bears, but then the altitude and the air quality hit me, and I was like, oh, okay.
Well, you got a close call with some weirdo in a van, right? That was following you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was after my youngest was born. So, again, I was still personal trainer and stuff. I was get out there and, work off that baby weight, pushing the stroller, jogging, walking, working my way down our bike path. We had a really cool bike path. It was 2 miles down to the turnaround, 2 miles back. But this is in the early days before they pushed it all the way through. But, so I would do that, and I always had my little cell phone. It was like a Razor. It was like an old cell phone. And my gun. I had a holster when I run with my stroller, I put the holster close to in the harness, but in front of me on the stroller so I could grab it quickly if I needed to. Safety was on for anybody watching, oh my gosh, your baby was right there. Yeah, that's why I had a gun, because my baby was right there. So I'm jogging, pushing him, walking, and I noticed this van go by. And it's a van, right? Really clean van, really an older van, but really clean and well kept. It went by, and then it went by again, and then it went by again, and I was like, okay, so then the next week I go out again, or the next day, it's probably the next day, and I go out again, and I'm jogging along, and I'm 2 miles out, so I'm between homes, there's not a lot of people that could help me if I needed help. The van goes by again, comes back by again, and then the next time it comes by, it slows down, and I'm jogging, and like I said, my baby was maybe gosh, Colin was, yeah, sorry, I have to bleep that one out. But my youngest was maybe just a few months old. So it was like August, September. And so I'm not running fast. I'm jogging slow. And he pulls into the bike path next to the jogging path and just kind of goes really, really slow right by me and then goes forward. And then I see him come back in a different vehicle, but I recognized him and he had another person with him right away. I got on the phone. I don't know why. I called my father-in-law, I believe, because he's the one that came to get me. I think my husband at the time, he must have been doing something. He must have been out somewhere where I couldn't get a hold of him. So, yeah, my father-in-law hopped in his truck, came, picked up me, my baby, and the stroller, and we drove back. We called, the troopers, let them know what was going on. But that was a really creepy, close call because, I feel like coming back in a different vehicle with another person really, I felt kind of tired. I did not go out. I did not go out jogging and walking for a while. And that sucked because that was one of my, stress out. You get outside. It's important to get outside in Alaska. The winters are long, so when the weather's good, you want to get out for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my scary tale.
So when we were talking, you were living in Alaska, and we planned for you to come meet me for the first time. I really thought that I met my match when it comes to being a seafood snob. Because at that time I was going to Boston all the time in Maryland and Rhode Island, and so I became accustomed to really good seafood, right? So I assumed that you're going to come to Utah and just kind of
You had to be well versed in all the seafoods.
Yeah. So I was a little nervous about that topic, and you realize, you tell me about
there's two
your
seafoods.
Seafood experience in Alaska wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
There's two seafoods that I have my experience with that I can say that Alaska has the best of. Obviously, sockeye salmon, red salmon, king salmon. You're not going to get a better fillet anywhere in the world than what I've had in Alaska. Now, maybe if you're pulling it right out of the water, you can't beat pulling a fish out of the ocean, filleting it, throwing it on your grill. The meat's like butter. It just melts in your mouth. It's perfect.
You've also clubbed the salmon too.
I've also, that's dip netting. That's, we've done that too. So, when it comes to salmon and to halibut, I've had the best, and I've had it every way imaginable because salmon is a subsistence food in Alaska. So if you live in Alaska, you can subsistence hunt and subsistence fish. And that means you're a resident, you get a certain amount of fish per household and then per member of household. So you get to go dip netting, and you go out into the inlet and you've got these long poles with this big round metal ring, and there's a net in it. And you're up to your chest. And when I finally got to go dip netting for the first time, I was hooked. I loved the adrenaline of it. I loved getting that fish. And you're ready to go. It's you don't want the fish to suffer, so it's whipping around, and you just give it a quick bonk on the head, and then it's you knock it out. But this was not trophy hunting. Now, I'm not a trophy hunter. I think if that's your cup of tea, that's awesome. I would never hunt or kill anything just so I could say I hunted or killed it. But there's a certain kind of carnal satisfaction that comes with hunting something that you then use, every bit of it. You prepare it in every way imaginable. Salmon meat got us through many a tight winters as a young family, when money's tight and stuff. Salmon is amazing. We canned it, we filleted it, and vacuum packed it, freezed it, we smoked it, then canned it. I've deep fried salmon, which is way better than what you'd think, with some panko and coconut flakes. A recipe my mother-in-law at the time had. Super duper good. And then the same with halibut. Oh my God. But I come here and John's we'd been dating for quite a while, and he brought me to Market Street.
Yeah,
Market Street.
A local place here.
Yeah, Market Street. Yeah, and it was our first Valentine's Day, and he asked me if I'd ever had oysters, raw oysters, and I had not. Now I
assume you.
No, I'd made clam chowder from scratch with clams, but I've never had oysters in the shell with the hot sauce and the, whatever else you put in there, the horseradish,
Horseradish,
you know,
Tabasco
lime,
sauce.
whatever,
Yeah.
like whatever. Oh my God. Like I was hooked. It was so good. I'm obsessed with fresh seafood. Well, we're going to do an episode on our Boston trip where, oh man, I
took Ashley to Boston
I
for her
went
first
all
time.
out. Yeah, we'll have a whole episode about that trip. That was fun. But so yeah, now John has slowly but surely introduced me to all the other many types of seafoods there are, other than salmon and halibut.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd had Alaskan king crab, but only like once or twice over the 16 years that I lived there. So it really wasn't part of my diet, you know. But I love seafood. I mean, that's been my favorite parts about our trips to Scotland. We're gonna do a whole episode on our Scotland trip too, and that we'll talk about this really cool place we went to that had the best seafood ever. But yeah, it's been many new things that he's introduced me to for sure. Sushi. Had my very first sushi with you. But
That's right.
This is
You're welcome.
this is the Alaska episode. We'll go into the
Yeah.
how you wooed me episode later.
Yeah.
So I don't regret moving to Alaska at all, making the adventure. I mean, it was fun. I tend not, when I look back at things, I tend not to focus on all the bad stuff. I've always kind of had that in me where sometimes I forget the bad stories.
Yeah.
And I don't like the mood I'm in when my brain wants to bring them up anyway. So it's like usually when you're already in a crappy mood, you're like, oh, that one time. I try not to think about that stuff.
Yeah, we've decided that if there's ever a zombie apocalypse and we're living off the land, that you'll be in charge of all the hunting and gathering and the clubbing of the salmon and quartering of the moose and all that good stuff. And
Yeah.
I'll be back at the camp over like cultural awareness or something, teaching the kids about
Yeah. I'll
being
have
a
to
thespian or
I'll have to brush up on my my skills for sure, but I
Yeah.
think I could pick it up easy. Again, I like it. I like hunting for a purpose. I do miss having fresh game,
yeah.
fresh meat. You know, I didn't do a lot of the killing up in Alaska. That was like moose and stuff like that. My husband did that a lot. My husband at the time was the hunter. He would hunt. But when it came time to process the meat, that's where I really shined. I liked it. I liked using the canners and learning how to smoke the meat and process it and and then preparing meals with all that fresh stuff. I mean, moose stew. My stepmom is a TV cook personality, and she had this device back in the day called the turbo cooker. And I remember I call my parents every day. I call my dad and stepmom every single day and chat with them. And usually while I was cooking dinner, so I'd have the phone in my ear because, this before headset. So I'm like, probably why I have this neck problem now on this side. And I'm cooking, and she would always say, well, what are you doing? And I tell her I was turbo cooking bullwinkle. That was our little joke. She, hi, turbo cooking bullwinkle again. So there was a lot of satisfaction that came with,
Yeah.
basically from start to finish. You're hunting the animal, you're processing it, and you're utilizing it, and it's not going to waste, and it's helping your family out. So
Yeah.
I like it. I think I would do okay in the apocalypse. I think I would. I've watched enough zombie shows.
Yeah. Every time we go out to dinner with people and they're getting to know us, we bring up Alaska and they just ask you a ton of questions.
They do. Yeah, I think it's a novelty to some people. There's people that think that you do live in igloos, and I think I might have been one of them when I was 19 when I moved there. So I forgive myself for that. But yeah, there's Alaska. It's it's the one state in America that it just still feels so wild because it is so wild, and it's removed. Now you need a passport to get there. So you're either flying there or driving through Canada to get there. That's not what we're used to right now. Now I can hop in a truck or hop in the car and we can drive and go see my parents in California or see my brother or see whoever. We can drive there, and there's a freedom with that. When you're in Alaska, you are remote. Like, you can't just decide you want to go through Canada, because if you don't all have passports, if your children don't, you can't get through Canada anymore without a passport. And flying is not cheap, so it is not an easy state to live. Just kind of knowing that it's almost like being on an island.
It is an island.
Yeah, it's like being on an island. So there is that remoteness to it. That's also why it scores very high on who's most likely to survive a zombie apocalypse. Like, which state would do the best. And I think for Alaska, I think it's the ratio of guns to people.
Well, you also have the highest rate of people that are on the run from the feds too.
Yeah, that's true. So they know how to handle a weapon, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyways, cheers to Alaska. It helped make me who I am today.
We're glad you're here in Utah.
Yeah, I am too. Like I said, we have all these cool stories, right? That
Yeah.
kind of stories that brought us together, but these lives we had beforehand. And even though some of it was like stressful and hard and, at the time felt just horrific and stifling, it did make us who we are today. And
Yeah.
there's no guarantee we would be even slightly as interesting as we are if we hadn't experienced all that stuff, right?
Touche.
Yep. So that's the Alaska episode.
Yeah.
Like we always say, we want to hear your stories. Do you have like a crazy story of how you got to where you are today? And I mean, literally how you got there. Did you do like a road trip to the East Coast or from the East Coast to Utah and just land here and decide to stay? I mean, how did you get to be who you are today? We want to know. I think it sounds fun. So,
Well, thanks for tuning in.
yeah.
Like and subscribe, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, thank you for joining us in the Outer Darkness Happy Hour podcast. Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a great
Ceviche.
night.